Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. It's 10 a.m. It's Real Estate Now. Keith Kitch here.
Stacey Chevalier, good to be here, as always.
As always, nice. What's new, Stacey? It's another beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. Let's see what's going on with the market. Lots of feed coming out in our industry of just tax exchanges and all sorts of stuff. But let's just start basic for Keith and I, and we'll go back to rates.
Yeah, basic. Let's talk rates. Rates are staying steady below 3% again. We ticked up almost at 3.2, and now we're back down below 3. And so it's still a great time. Long story short, we can put a pin in that. It's still a great time. I think you hit the nail on the head with some of the tax strategies coming out right now, as far as where the Biden administration wants to take capital gains and what that means for 1031 exchanges and people that want to cash in before that happens. So definitely stay tuned. We're working on getting 1031 facilitators on the show coming up here in May. And that will be a great show for all of you that want to not get around the tax man, but tax defer a transaction on a non-owner occupied property. So lots to talk about in that realm, ever changing. But coming back to today's market, Stacey, it's a hot market, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I think it's the hottest in the history. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We've been doing this for a year, and the market was always pretty hot, right? And it keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And it's hard. It's I feel for my kids. Like, how are they going to buy a house? It's hard for me in my 40s to be buying a house. So, which I'm doing, right? As you know, right now. So there's another option, and that's what our show is about today. So I think let's bring in Pam, and let's start talking about how you can purchase a home with others.
Absolutely. Pamela Hughes with Kobay. How are you?
I'm doing great, Keith. Thank you. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you.
Yeah, totally. So you, maybe you could just give some feed or some background, because introducing you in this market makes perfect sense, right? Here's Pam Hughes. She does Kobay. We're going to teach you how to buy these homes that are a little expensive with someone else. But you started this way before this market. So when did your company, when did you open your doors?
We started the company, we started doing research in 2015. And after about a year of research, launched our site in late 2016 and really started doing business in early 2017. Since then, we've seen the word Kobay become a label. People have been doing Kobaying forever. I mean, for centuries, actually. But it actually now has kind of a nomenclature. And we now know that about 25% of transactions today that happen, purchases of homes, are by what we define as Kobay, a Kobay.
And that's 25% now?
Yes.
Let's talk about what is Kobay. So what you guys determine is Kobay. It's still in the world not a very common thing, because I think there's a perception out there that I have to go buy the house by myself or with a family member or with my spouse, right? So what is Kobay?
So Kobay is when any two or more people pool their resources together to jointly purchase a home, and the result is co-ownership. And that's what makes it complicated. It's the purchase, actually, and then the co-ownership, which lives on well past the actual, act of buying a home. And so that's where Kobay comes in. We help throughout that process, and we help with the planning and consensus building through to co-ownership, with the intention of kind of helping people set up what that relationship is going to look like over a time series.
So the transaction is one thing, right? Mm-hmm. Buying that house with that person. I think what is really interesting here is you guys are really helping the whole planning post acquisition where it does get sticky, because in the world of Washington, right, if you're buying it with your spouse, we're a community property state. If anything were to happen to the other person, it just defaults to the house. If you're a single person, it just defaults to your estate, right?
Right.
So where's that mud and mire that people may be having a little fear about co-buying with somebody that is not related or not a spouse?
Well, it's a lot of places. People
It's a
are
lot.
people are kind of thinking, okay, first of all, are we both on, or are we all on the loan together on one loan? Many people come to this thinking they're all going to get separate loans, and that's not the case, as you know. They're borrowing together, and so because they are joint and severally liable to repay that loan, we have to keep that in mind. And yet, sometimes people come to the party with disparate incomes and assets, different things that they bring to the table. And we help them kind of fashion how they can do that and still make it work and maintain their obligation to the lender at the same time in a way that's practical and legal and protects them. But the biggest, to answer your question a little more directly, the biggest area I think of muddiness is in the planning and consensus building process. And many people come to us and say, oh, we just want that co-ownership agreement. We want a templated document. And unfortunately, that doesn't tend to work well, particularly particularly if one person's filling it out, which oftentimes is the case. You know, you've got one individual who's kind of driving the process and fills it out to their liking, and others just agree kind of tacitly. What's really important is that you go through the actual process of discussing and agreeing and building consensus. And so we try to catch people in advance of their making an offer. The worst case scenario is when someone calls us and says, we're making an offer on a property and we want to co-buy. Can you help us? And we're like, no, no, don't do that. That's not, I mean,
are most people like living in the home together, or do you get people who are like, Keith and I want to buy an investment property somewhere together. Neither of us are living in it. Like, what is generally what you're seeing? Or is it more like Keith and I are going to move our families in together, and we got to figure all that out too, how we're going to live with two families?
Great question, Stacey. We see all sorts of permutations. We see people who are living together. We see people who are, you know, maybe families helping their adult children, or sometimes adult children helping their parents, where there's some subset of the parties involved who are living in the property, and others who are simply providing funding, either in the form of down payment or some other help. Because as a company, our ethos is helping people to buy and own homes. We see more people who at least some of the party is living in the home, occupying the home. But we do from time to time get either vacation home buyers or investment purchases as well. It really doesn't, again, the process is the same, so it doesn't matter, except that you're going to look at how you take and hold title a little differently, and the decision making, the elements that go into decision making tend to be different on an investment versus a primary occupancy, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So what makes, you've talked about the process a couple of times. What makes the process with Kobay different than just grabbing any real estate agent off the street?
Mm-hmm. Great question. It's interesting. I just was talking to a gentleman yesterday who said he disclosed as we were speaking that he was going to see a house on Thursday that he thought he was going to put an offer on, but he hadn't talked to a loan officer. He did have a real estate agent. And in my mind, in a very competitive marketplace, that was all backwards, and he's setting himself up for disappointment. And so, my first reaction was, why is that real estate agent even showing him a house and not first asking, have you been pre-approved for a mortgage loan, and at what price point? And
say it, Jerry. Show me the money.
So our process is different in that it's designed to try to help avoid those circumstances where people are going out unprepared, making an offer. And by the way, a lot of times people think they're pre-approved, and really they've either picked up the phone or they've plugged in their data to some online system, and they've gotten back, oh, you could buy up to X dollars, and they aren't pre-approved. And so they can't really make an offer, and they lose out on that house that they love, and later learn that that's a price point that they really probably shouldn't be looking at. So our process is designed, first of all, to be thoughtful, to eliminate the time that it's going to take you each step of the way. And so we've put things in order. Planning and consensus building is first and upfront, because we want the parties involved to know who's going to be participating and in what fashion, because if they don't know that, then they're not going to be able to be pre-approved. They're not going to know what they can spend. They're going to waste their time and the professionals, and then they're going to lose the attention of the professionals who right now are, overwhelmed with business opportunity. So when we get someone who says, I've been looking for a year and the lenders won't call us back and so forth, oftentimes it's an indicator that you probably haven't done the homework you need to do in order to get the attention of the lender to help you, go where you need to go. So, our involvement helps shepherd them through this process and connect them to the right professional at the right time, so everybody's time is best used.
Yeah, so we work, in full disclosure, we work with Pam and her team on some of these transactions. So from a lending perspective, there are programs and things we have to follow to join households and people together to Kobay. But that being aside, because I say that because I know kind of the process a consumer would go through. And I think that's kind of what Keith is trying to get at, how we explain that to who's watching. What are some questions you can share with us that maybe you're getting the consumer to go down this train of thought that maybe they weren't even expecting? Like they were just trying to figure out how do we buy houses together without, all the questions that come up. There's so many that I would have never thought of. And then once I go through your process, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, thank goodness someone asked this question. This could be a huge issue. So what are those things that no one's thinking of?
So the order of our process is such that we don't get into the co-ownership elements so much. We have education that people can avail themselves to on our site that talks about how we're going to take and hold title, for instance. So let's say you've got an unmarried couple who, and this happens a lot, where one person has a substantial income, maybe a different person has a substantial cash down payment, and they're trying to decide, how are we going to split ownership? And so we usually have them start thinking about that, but really not define that, because they are joint and severally liable, and we're going to connect them to an attorney, and we're going to take them through a process that helps them decide, what is it really that they're trying to accomplish. We always kind of err on the side of keeping it as simple as possible. Some people want to over-engineer the ownership issues and how I earn equity and that sort of thing. Best case scenario is you split the ownership evenly and you work with the other levers, whether that's waiting till the sale of the property, or you have some sort of shift in the relationship that you even up the disparate contributions financially, either on the down payment side or on the monthly mortgage payment side. So we start the process with questions about, what is the income you're bringing to the table, and what are you willing to contribute to the mortgage payment each month? What is cash down payment you have? What is your credit worthiness look like? And we do that. Nothing is Social Security number based. It's all self-reported and general. But essentially, it gives the group the opportunity to say, for instance, we know that the lowest credit score kind of prices the loan for the group. So
yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Is this third person in our group who has a 600 credit score? Do we want to have our loan priced there when we the others have an 800 credit score? Maybe you give some thought to what makes the most sense for the group given those circumstances. So going through that process of, who's playing what role, who's bringing what to the table, and then what do we want in terms of a property? What kind of, is it urban or suburban, and is it townhome or condo or single family house or whatever? All those conversations are important to have before you go in and start your loan application.
That it's so refreshing to hear you say that, Pam, because I've always looked at real estate, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential. Real estate is an investment, in my opinion, and that's how I talk to my clients about real estate. I get it, that's your owner-occupied house, and there's a lot of emotions that come to the table.
Right.
But it's really a strategy session about how you're going to invest your dollars.
Yep.
And what that looks like down the road. And I think what I love hearing about your system is you're getting everybody on that same page, because you mentioned something earlier that I think about my brother and all of his college roommates, and they all wanted to get together and buy a house. And they're like, oh, let's all go buy a house. And then they're thinking about this. And then all of a sudden, I could see them fast forward. This is like decades ago. But fast forward to like making an offer, and they don't have that conversation about credit. They don't have that conversation about capacity or who's bringing the down payment. So that's really refreshing to hear you bringing all that out up front, because that right there is the success hurdle or the failure hurdle, in my opinion. So that's awesome.
It's not just the upfront piece, right? Like, I think it even expands to, have you guys thought about when this dissolves? Because no one owns property forever. Right. So what's the timeline we want to own it? What if someone ends up getting married and that whoever this other person is doesn't want to be in a Kobay? There's a trillion reasons why it could dissolve. So how do you walk people through the whole process?
That component of our process is after people start their search. We get them connected with a real estate agent and start their search. Because remember, a lot of people come to us and, everyone's accustomed to look for the house first, then go get a real estate agent, then get a lender. We're trying to train that differently, and it's challenging. So we're holding people back and saying, let's do this a little differently. Do your planning and consensus building up front. Then we connect you to the lender. Then we connect you to a Kobay certified real estate agent. And then we open up another portion of our site that Stacy addresses those questions. And our site has a dynamic question set that allows people to choose what questions they want to ask the group members and answer those questions. And those are the things, the what if scenarios. Do we want to have a guest policy? What if, how long do we intend this relationship, which is not a partnership technically from a legal sense typically, but operates like a partnership. So the ideal circumstances, you set a timeline for that. And that is your primary exit strategy. But life happens, right? So
Yep.
someone dies, someone loses a
A
job.
pandemic happens.
Exactly. We had a couple of sisters whose parents helped them purchase a couple years ago, and
Right.
actually, you folks funded the loan. They, after 1 year, one of them got a job out of state and they had to move. So their co-ownership agreement had pre-established what they would do in that case, and they followed that, and everybody's happy. So as long as you have the opportunity to ask yourself the questions, what if somebody has a credit problem? What if somebody has litigation? What if somebody has an addiction problem? What if somebody has a new relationship, or a child? What do all these possibilities, how do they impact the relationship we thought we were going into? And how are we going to make decisions about life going forward? And that those are the things, to Stacey's point, that you want to think about before you close your transaction.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many people could Kobay together? What's the maximum?
That's a great question. Well, here's how I typically answer that. We've had as many as 10 people come to us together. I don't know how many projects you've been involved in, but I have a project and process background. And what I've discovered in life, and what's kind of what the pundits say, is that anytime you get beyond 7 or 8 people, decision-making becomes unwieldy in any circumstance. And I think the same is true in a household. And what we've found is, because Fannie and Freddie have guidelines as to how many people actually specifically fit in the system without going to manual underwriting and so forth, it always makes life a little easier if you can reduce that to a core group. So what we've seen is as many as 10 people involved, but only 3 of them were actually on the mortgage and owned the home. So you can accommodate the larger circumstances. It's not ideal. It's really difficult to make decisions and actually execute on a plan. But that happens sometimes, and sometimes it happens successfully. It usually takes years, honestly. And I'm plugged into a couple of co-housing groups, and so that is their orientation, and it's extremely challenging. And I always say, this probably isn't going to work, but 3 to 5 can work. You can make 3 to 5. 3 is ideal, and that's actually that's kind of our average is 3. So that tends to be ideal. Sometimes you've got 3 and maybe 2 parents or a parent who's involved as providing money, essentially gifting, but may have some ownership interest or some sort of interest otherwise. But yeah, so I think for practical circumstances, if you can keep it to in the 3 to 5 range, that's ideal. And we have a lot of, like I said, unmarried couples, siblings, friends that are twosomes that work well too.
Gotcha. So we're getting close to. Oh, go for it.
I was just going to say, there's so many families that share a house, generations, right? And at least from what I've seen historically, they're just buying houses and letting family move in. This seems like a little frightening after hearing the questions you would come up with. So I would recommend everyone to at least start with Pam and Kobay if you're in that situation, to make sure you turn over all those little rocks to protect your family's estate, essentially, even if it's your parents. It sounds like this is helpful. So
thank you. Yeah. It's always easier to do it up front than, we get calls from people who say, we co-bought 8 years ago and now this has happened or that has happened. And to do something remedially typically is involving an attorney, and it's usually not a pretty situation. If it were a circumstance where everyone could agree, they wouldn't need, the individuals wouldn't need help. So it's usually a contentious circumstance, and you don't want that. It's too big a purchase.
Yeah, exactly. So with the last few minutes that we have, Pam, tell me, what are maybe the 2 or 3 big benefits right now in co-buying that people? I do a weekly show, Mortgage from a Treehouse, at 7 p.m. every Thursday. That was a shameless plug. It's tonight at 7 p.m. But anyway, I talk to all the self-eliminators. There's a lot of self-eliminators out there that just say, "Oh, I can't do it because the market's too hot. It's this, my income." So what are the big advantages of coming together and having that power of co-buying?
Great question. So we always say that we put the advantages in 2 buckets. Our clients put the advantages in 2 buckets. One is social and one is financial. I would also add there's an ecological budget or bucket that may be subsumed in the other 2, but I think it deserves its own place. Densification is an opportunity with co-buying, and so the opportunity to be close to those you love and care about, or in some cases work with and want to, a lot of times people are starting businesses and spending a lot of time together, and so they want to co-locate. But to your point earlier, Keith, really oftentimes, even though people call it social, it comes down to a financial, it is an investment. A home is an emotional thing, but it also is an investment. And the way I look at it personally is that it helps people to build, protect, and create wealth, essentially, and stability. And so to the extent that you are achieving economies of scale by sharing costs that ordinarily you would bear yourself, you're all contributing to the maintenance of a home. You can afford more of a home than you could by yourself by coupling with others and pooling resources. So I think, to me, those are the biggest benefits. But the other thing is that, intergenerational households can share responsibilities in such a way that, the young adult kids who may have children of their own have built-in childcare. The elderly may have built-in care as they age. I think you can spread the opportunity to contribute to where it fits best with, the members of a household when you have more than just 1 or 2 people in that household.
Strength in numbers, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And that childcare, that's no joke. Man,
no, especially during a pandemic.
Childcare was more expensive than my mortgage at that point with 2 kids in childcare.
No doubt. Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah. So. And again, in this time where we've been working from home and so forth, to have somebody else who, can help educate or entertain or take your kids around or whatever, I think it's kind of a really nice to have. Makes life
huge nice to have.
Yeah.
So right on. Well, Pam, we're gonna put your there you go, your website. That's what I was like, what is that called? Website. So they can reach out to you guys at gokobay.com. Excellent. And you guys have all the cool stuff up there to be contacted and get started. So definitely, I would advise.
Right? So not just Washington. So you do other states. So if other people are watching, go ahead and get on the website and see it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Where else are you at? Where are you helping clients in other states?
We're presently operating in Washington, Oregon, and California, and as I mentioned to Stacy earlier, on a limited basis, we'll do other states. It takes a little bit more work because of where we are, but it's something that we can look at it on a case-by-case basis if someone has an interest.
Awesome. Well, Pamela, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
It's good to
And
see
I'm
you,
sure-
Keith. Stacy.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you.
It's so great to
Been a long
reconnect.
time.
So, yep, that was like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it was.
We're slowly getting there, so when we can, we'll all get together. But yeah, definitely great to see you, and I appreciate your partnership over the years, and just wish you all the success. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to see
But
you.
have a great day. We'll catch you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Co-buying. If you're looking for a new way to buy or bolster your ability to buy, that is a great way to do it. So,
yeah.
Stacy, that's another week here on Real Estate Now. We'll catch you guys next Thursday at 10 a.m.
Yep. Everyone have a good weekend. Take care.